Hey guys, this is Mike Gano. Excited to be doing a video for PokerVIP.com. And for today's session, we'll be doing a 200 no limit live play. But before I get started, since this is my first video for Poker VIP, I will share a little about who I am. I write the poker strategy blog, which you may have heard of, pokerinabox.com, which is on the screen there. You can also see my starting hand charts. I give those away for free, my opening ranges. So if you're curious about, what I'm doing more precisely, you can always go there and get those charts, among other things. I am, in addition to a 15-year professional, mostly online cash player, I'm also a coach. I am also a video producer and an author. I have done videos for just about all the major training sites, and I write articles for pokernews.com, among other sources. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm also a DJ, and I like to travel. So that's about it. We'll go ahead and get right to the action and see if we can get into some trouble. So before I get started here, I just want to show you this, that people ask me on my stream all the time, my Twitch stream, which I'll show you in a second, what is the skin I'm using or the layout. So I figure I'll go ahead and tell you guys that now before you have to ask. This is the one right here. This is pokerlayout.eu. I'm not affiliated. I suppose I should be if I'm going to be advertising for them. But yeah, I just find it's a pretty clean layout, nicer than the default one. So if you like the layout I'm using and play on 888, there you go. And then I was also going to say, because I forgot to do it before, if so there's the site. Might as well pull that up while it's coming up. New tab, Twitch. Komodo Dragon Jesus is a good friend of mine. He's another cash streamer. There's not too many of us, but I am Poker Tips. So if you go to twitch.tv/pokertips, there you go. And it says MTT prizes. I'm a cash player. Every now and then I do MTTs and stream some of my own DJ production and beats. And there you go. So this is the site if you want to check that out. My poker strategy blog. And we are ready to dive in. Let's do this. One thing we'll definitely be doing as we go is talking about reads. And one important thing to point out about 888, if you don't play here, you may not know this, but in the fast fold game, the snap games, which is like Zoom that I'm playing now, you can't use a HUD. So that means that we have to take really good notes, and the best notes are built upon color labels. They start with color labels, a good labeling schema. So that's what I have here. I call this the bony fish. I think other people do too. This means he's a maniac. So we're not firing again. Yeah, we pick up a little equity, but his hand is very strong. We're probably behind once he calls the flop. And one of the few hands we beat, so lucky to see that. One of the few hands we beat that he doesn't bet on the river. He might bet some bluffs on the river, but when he checks the river, that's one of the few hands we beat. Maybe some baby pairs, something like that. This yellow here this is kind of a lime green yellow, is lag. And orange, like the LOL tricked you, is a reg. That's what we're looking at over here. I could four-bet that, but I didn't. Those are two regs, and that's kind of what you're looking for. Part of the reason I didn't four-bet it, cold four-bet, is because I took so long. If I had a chance to act a little faster, if I wasn't talking so much, then I might have four-bet that. Easy fold here. So I've set up hotkeys. You can use hotkeys on 888, which is how I'm able to act so fast. Just hitting the keys on my keyboard to choose the action. So I like to distinguish between really good regs, average regs, bad regs, lags. This red is a really good reg. I think it's important, and the orange is average, if you're going to appropriately put players on a level, because a really good reg is more likely to be balanced in certain spots, at least at 200 no limit, whereas an average reg, maybe not. Or a really good reg may be playing very exploitably versus, you know, someone else, possibly versus you, hopefully not. If he's playing very exploitably versus you and he's good, that means he's figured out something to exploit, and you probably don't even know it yet. Sure, this is close. One personal strategy strategic change I've made lately is I'm calling wider from the blinds. And when he checks back the turn, the question is, do we bluff the river? And I don't think I'm going to. The problem is if he bluffs the river, but I don't think he checks. You know, I was thinking, what do I get to fold? I might get a 6 to fold, but I think he checks back a lot of his 6s. So when he bets the flop, he's got like a 9 or some bluffs. And we have a tough decision when we check any bets, but I think since his range is a bit more polarized on the flop, and he's not going to have hands like a 6 or pocket 7s that we get to fold, then it doesn't make as much sense to bet. So yeah, like I was saying, I like to break up my leveling for regs of different skill levels. So like this Lars guy is purple, not as good as some of the other regs. He's got, another way of saying that is he has some obvious leaks in his game. Ebola VD, pretty good reg. Now, here's a good spot, a good example of how we want to keep the fish involved, right? So we're calling to keep this guy who represents a big part of our income, this true. We want him in there. Unfortunately, he folded. That's a nice turn for us. So it's as much as I'd like to raise because there's 2 flushes possible, either flush draw is possible. He could have a flush draw or he could have king jack, both of which are bad for us. So not going to make as much sense to raise the turn. Then on the river, I'm just going to check back because I don't think we're getting called by worse so much. Well, let me think about this. I take it back. I think he would bet some of his flush draw bluffs. Yeah, I'm on the fence here. I think I'm going to check it back because he might have called with this, but since we didn't raise the turn, you know, we may be a little capped. He may think of us as a little capped, and he may try to pull a check raise on the river. So I question how much worse we get called by. He might have called us there. Here, let's what we can do. The nice thing about fast fold is we can pause and pull up these hands and talk about them. So let's think about this one a little more. Did I miss some value on the river? I mean, if I bet $30, he could still put me on a flush draw, right? Maybe he puts me on a weaker 2 pair because he did have queen 10. And the truth is, it's very unlikely he's got a flush or a king jack, because if he has those, he's probably just going to bet because he doesn't want to miss value for all the times I have a jack, right? So I think it's pretty safe to say that we are ahead most of the time here. And as far as getting check raised, I mean, we do have king jacks some of the time. So, I mean, more inclined probably to raise the turn because he bet pretty big. So I kind of put him on something, and I don't want to see another yellow or blue card. So I would raise the turn, but he doesn't know that, right? He may think that I'm going to have King Jack in my range a good portion of the time. So yeah, the more I think about this, I do like a bet on the river, a small bet, and we shouldn't be so afraid of getting check raised because we're uncapped, as they say. All right. I figure we'll go for half an hour, 40 minutes or so today. It's a good length of session before one should take a break. Big on the breaks. Reset that mental game so you can release all that accumulated tilt and stress. I would say, if you're curious, the 888 game has gotten harder. I mean, all the games, I guess, continue to get harder over time. But I didn't really detect. I've played on this for maybe approaching a year and a half on this site. And at least I didn't detect for quite a while. Definitely calling here, given I've already got some money in. He's probably a fish, given his stack size. Nice playable hand. And he's still got plenty of room for us to operate. But I'd say within the last few months, the 200 no limit game in particular, the fast fold game is getting tougher, which is interesting. And I blame the Russians. Nothing against them. I have students and comrades that are Russian. And I totally respect them as players. In fact, it's just they, I think more than any other country, they are really starting to excel right now. Perhaps Germany as well. But the strongest players in this game are definitely Russians, and there's a lot of them. Like this guy poses a lot of challenges. In fact, I'm making a tie. Let's see. This is a dangerous play because this guy's going to squeeze a lot. We'll check it through. We're crushing the board enough. Check call 3 streets here. This is top of the range, if you're familiar with this concept. So hard to not check call 3 streets. Ace queen, perhaps, is another hand. That is going to be top of my range. I mean, maybe some ace 2, ace 7 suited. And he overbets. This is what makes this game challenging, is you see a lot of big bets. In fact, now that I say that and think about that, it's kind of a good indicator of how tough your game runs. If you see regs making pot-sized bets and overbets, it's a pretty good sign that you've got some tougher regs, because it's not really a straightforward move. I mean, fish do it. I'm sure you've seen fish making crazy overbets in your game, but once you start seeing the regs do it, it's a whole different ball game. So now we're going to use some notes. I do take a lot of notes on these players. He's fit fold. He c-bets. The question is, do we want to check raise? I think I will check raise that small bet. He's going to think I'm just check raising because he bets so small. Some of the time, at least. Not that time. And it's easy, like on that board, I'm going to have a lot of gut shots, hands like king, queen, that if you think about king, queen offsuit, that's 16 combinations. So even if half the time you're check raising that hand, then you better be in there with some value hands, right? Or putting that a different way, make a tightish fold on the button there with 2 aggressive regs in the blinds. To put that a different way, when he's thinking about your range, and of course, before you even have that conversation with yourself, make sure that he's a good reg that's going to think about your range, or even a decent reg in these games. Even bad regs in this game are thinking about your range. So if when he's thinking about your range, he's gonna look at the board, think about your range, and say, "Wait a second, he's got tons of gut shots." And I know that if there's offsuit combinations of those gut shots, that's so many combinations that he's bound to be, as we say, over bluffing. So it's not that this is still bottom of my range. I'm gonna go for a check raise here. If I had like 10s or 9s, then I might bet, and then we just make like a smallish bet on the river. A pro tip: if you get to the river and your hand can't win, then you need a pretty darn good reason not to bluff, not to bet. If you're against a calling station and the board is really wet, meaning that a lot of players are going to just look at the board and look at their hand and think, wow, I've got a good hand in absolute terms, even though in relative terms they may not have a very strong hand. So that would be a situation where you can just check fold even if you can't win. But most of the time, you should be betting if you can't win. I resisted betting earlier where I said I'll go for a check raise, because I will kind of break often, and this is a more advanced concept, I'll break my range down by strength. I sort of break it up and say, okay, at the top I have my best hands. I'm going to play those really fast and bet and 3-bet if I'm raised. Then you have sort of the next level where you say, okay, maybe I'll sprinkle some check raises in here with these guys. And then the other ones are your bet folds, just continuing to move down the scale in strength. Then you move into your medium hands that might be check calls, some slightly weaker hands that are check folds. And then you get into your bluffs and semi-bluffs where you kind of go back to the top. You say, okay, this is going to be a bet 3-bet. This is a monster bluff, like a monster draw. I think I'm going to raise this. It's the same guy from earlier. I'm going to get squeezed, and I'd rather 3-bet this. So yeah, then you go back to the top of your list with your draws and work your way down again. With your weaker draws, maybe you bet, and then your very weakest draws, i.e. your trash, your weakest hands, you just check fold. Interesting, he missed, he checked back the river. I wonder if we could say he missed some value there. I guess with all the broadways I have, am I calling with an ace? Because there's not many that he beats. There are few, but not many. It's fair enough if he checks back there. Another thing I do with my labeling is I break up the aggro fish or maniac and the passive fish or whales. And I think different people have, we all have slightly different interpretations of what fish means. With this maniac behind me, I'm going to fold this hand that's a little harder to play out of position. I'd rather have like queen 10 offsuit, two bigger cards than king 2 suited. I'd open their king 2 suited there with more reggish players behind me, but with the maniac who's going to call wide and then not fold and put pressure on me, I want two bigger cards, or at least an ace. But yeah, so different people have different ways of interpreting that. The way I interpret it is these guys are your maniacs, and then the passive fish are really a completely different animal and should be treated such. I think it's important to make that distinction between the maniacs and the whales, because if you're seeing, you can be up against, even though the guy's playing over half of his hands, if he's a more passive fish, you got to give him respect when he's throwing chips in the pot. Like the passive fish doesn't fool around so much post flop. And I think I observe a lot of guys I coach in the micro games forgetting that sometimes and just lumping all the fish in together and value cutting themselves or stationing too much versus a guy that they say, oh, he's a fish. He can't have anything. When he bets, he always has something. So key distinction. And then between the regs, so I've talked about, good regs, bad regs, aggressive fish, passive fish. Between those two zones, and I separate those two zones by VPIP. So the reg zone is, let's see, the reg zone is, definitely up to 29, 30 VPIP, maybe getting into the lower 30s. The whales and maniacs, I usually start them around 42, 45 VPIP. So I have this gap of players, this zone of players between reg and whale. And again, you can break them up by either aggressive or passive. And I call the aggressive ones in that zone lags, loose aggressive, and the passive would be loose passive. Interestingly, I rarely see that loose passive player type. I'm not sure I even have I think I may have like a chicken. There's a chicken icon that I use on 888, but I don't see them very often at all. Whereas, we're going to fold this. These yellow guys, the lags, you do see a fair bit. Because these guys are verging on, they're tough to play against, the lags. They're verging on reg territory, but they just play more hands. Valera and drop far, both lags. Lars. So a more passive player. Since he's passive, I'm going to make a call here. The passive makes it easier to play post flop. And the fact that he's not very good increases my EV. And we're calling one street here. Passive doesn't mean he never c-bets. This is a good board for him. So he could still c-bet bluff this wider, hoping just to make us fold, random overcards. But then passive means that he's rarely betting the turn again, unless he's got the goods. And now we're in chopping territory. Big bet here on the rivers. A bit tragic. Ooh, look at this monster bet here. Okay, let's do a little math, shall we? We're 2-1. We're getting, we have 5 outs, which is 8-1. So we would need another 180 after our call. We don't really have that. So given the size of his bet, gonna fold. But this is another reason he's not the best player. Like, why would you bet that big? It makes my job of folding easier. And if he's bluffing at all, that's an expensive bluff. You know, he's narrowing my range down to really strong hands. So from his perspective, if he's doing that with like overpairs, he's just going to he's going to feel like he gets schoolered a lot. Like he gets a lot of folds, but he's just making me fold all my air or weak hands that he's crushing and getting it in versus hands that beat him. So not much point in making a bet that big. Well, we're going to go a little larger with our sizing on table 2. And the queen. I think I'm going to go into check call mode. The queen does hit him some. And I'll bet half pot on the river. Hope he's got a 7 here. Could check again. You know, who knows whether the value in checking is that he might bluff, right? So we check call, snap some bluffs, or we bet and get some calls from some weaker hands. I kind of like the check better, which is why the bet better, which is why I did it. Because remember, the guy limped pre-flop and he didn't bet on the turn. So all signs so far point to a more passive player, which means versus a passive player, they're just not going to bluff so much when you check to them. Therefore, your better play is to do the betting yourself. This is a bit too weak. As much as I'm drooling and wanting to get in there with these guys, we're going to fold that one. Suited connector, we're in there for sure. I raise all my pairs, all positions. Maybe we'll get to check this one down. That'd be nice. And surprisingly, we see some passive play from an aggressive player. A thing of beauty. This is a bit of a tricky spot, just because we're deep. Not tricky per se, but we just want to be a little cautious. May get an interesting hand come out of this. Wouldn't that be nice if Valera came out with a back raise? We'll never see it. He's always 3-betting the top of his range. This guy's unknown, which probably means he's a fish. He's definitely not a reg player. Not anyone I recognize. We start seeing some action from Valera. This is going to be tough. He is an aggressive player. We're definitely calling multiple streets. Because you know he's only repping a small handful of hands, and if you got an aggressive player repping a small handful of hands, you should be calling with the top of your range and then some. Again, Poker VIP is lucky for me. Should do videos for you guys all the time. I can finally buy that house in the Hamptons. Or that mansion in Thailand. My wife and I are moving to Thailand. I think it's been decided. Back to Thailand this fall in maybe 7 months or so. We try to get away from the colder Canadian climate in the winters. It's beautiful here in the summer, though. I'm on the west side in British Columbia. I'm American, but moved up here partially for love and partially for better poker climate. Slunik. Good rags, good rags. Jason. Hopefully we see some action from Jason. We could do something a bit tricky like call, and if Valera squeezes, which he is prone to do, he's got a super high squeeze. We could come over the top. The only problem with that play, I think I'm going to do it. I think I'm going to call. I was going to say the problem with that play is coming over the top is not so attractive since Lars, and then let's lead out here. We're pretty strong. We're way up at the top of our range. Check raise doesn't make any sense, and I want to get 3 streets in on this board. What is his? So showdown's 56. This guy can apply a lot of pressure. But as long as we're keeping our bets big, then we are... So I'm thinking about his range here. Ace 10. I was afraid of this. I can play the top of my range that way. So we are protected, meaning one question I want to be asking myself is, can he be exploiting me? Can he just do that with his entire range every time? But I've got enough strong hands in my range that, like, I could play a set that way, that it's not so big a deal. Meaning, so I think that deserves a little clarification. Not so big a deal, meaning that he can't do that every time and exploit me, because he'll be running into better hands some of the time. Enough of the time to prevent him from making it extremely plus EV. I don't know this guy, so we're going to fold. I do like to 3-bet the fishier players wider for value, but I don't like to do it with weak aces. If I had something like King Queen here, then that would be a hand I wouldn't mind 3-betting. But Ace-3 suited, even versus a fish, it's going to be a more profitable play to flat than to 3-bet. And we'll bet turn, bet river. If he check raised here, what would we do? I think just call. He still has monsters in his range. Jack 10. And we are capped, so it doesn't make sense to 3-bet bluff the turn. Yeah, I'm curious who this guy is. He seems new to the pack. So here, this is a much sexier hand than ace 2 suited. And I want to go further and say you better be getting your 3-bets in versus the fish. It is a mistake to not be 3-betting them wide. Okay, over here we're back at it with our boy Valera. So we will bet turn, bet river. We could do this with Jack X. And over here, I think I'll just call. I'm looking pretty strong with the call. No reason to cold 4-bet given these positions. We have an under the gun raise and a 3-bet. And if I 4-bet here, I mean, this is, I don't quite think my hand is strong enough to do that. Winnerty, okay. What do we know about Winnerty? This is what I like to do. Let's sit out here. Again, a nice feature. He tank bet, river nuts, bit light with his ace king jam pre-flop, flat at ace king. Cutoff versus middle. Raise call kings early position versus middle. Interesting. See this? He raise called kings early position versus middle position. So he might be a little less likely to, have aces and kings in this spot. I'm still going to give him a lot of credit. Pretty much looking to hit an ace or king, sometimes check it down. In this queen, well, I don't think he's got a lot of ace queen. But I think he can slow play. He can check his whole range on the flop. He can still play aces and kings there. So, and he is passive post flop. So we're just playing that real straightforward. I'm pretty honest and straightforward in 4-bet pots. I find other people get crazy enough that I don't need to do anything fancy. And if I'm primarily honest, that's enough for me to come out ahead. Once again, the poker VAP luck is holding true. And based on the time, I'm going to go ahead and play out my big blinds. One of my favorite expressions is play like a maniac in position and a rock out of position. What do we know about this guy? Oh, the same guy, passive but decent. And we'll just check this back. It's wet, we can call turn. If we bet 35, there's going to be 140 on the turn on the river. We're calling jam. Is he calling us down with a flush draw? We block king queen, which is unfortunate because that's a lot of his hands for calling us down. If we are always calling a jam, then perhaps we should bet ourselves. Or we can check fold, because this guy is, he'd have to be turning a hand like ace queen into a bluff. And I'm not sure that he does that. I've got that he's passive, right? And we could do things like check call here when we have the ace of yellow. I think I'm going to make a big hero fold here because I think he is... Yeah. He's passive. I don't think he's doing this enough as a bluff. So we're big old hero fold. And And that's one to end on. I think that is an interesting hand for us to end on, indeed. We'll, as soon as this table over here ends, we'll go back over that. So he checks it twice. Do we want to realize showdown value with our bottom pair? Or... I think so. I think he's going to have a bluffing range on the river. This guy is not passive. Okay, so let's go back over this one, and we'll analyze it as deeply as we can. So we 3-bet, he calls. We bet, he calls. We bet, he calls. We check, he jams. Now, I think he has to be turning a hand into a bluff. I think that's pretty much what it comes down to. When we 3-bet and we double barrel, his range is a queen or a flush draw. I think that's all there is to it. Jack 10, maybe he's got some Jack 10s that then float the turn, but he's calling with a gut shot on the turn when we make a pretty big bet. So I think it's unlikely that he's got Jack 10. His range, I think, is sets. I think he could show up here with a set of 3s and 6s, maybe a set of 8s. I don't think he has a set of 10s. And I think hands like ace-queen are going to check back on the river. Hands like king-queen, which are definitely in his call flop, call turn range, we're blocking. And then maybe, I think where we're going to see him jam is going to be a hand like queen-jack. Maybe he's got queen-10. I think he could jam queen 10 here, because when we check, we don't have the flush, right? We were always jamming the flush ourselves. So when we check, we have to find some bluffs in his range, some hands he's turning into bluffs. And queen jack, maybe. How many queen jacks does he have? He probably has 3 times 4. He probably has 12 combos of queen jack, but he's got a number of flush draw combos as well, right? And like we said, he's got 3 3s, he's got 3 6s, we'll say 2 8s, so that's 3 6 7 8. Yeah, I think this one's interesting. We're getting, you could say we're getting 2 to 1, so we have to be good, a third of the time. If he's always bluffing queen jack here, maybe this is a call. But I'm just not sure that's the case. You know what I mean? I think an average player like this that I even have a read as potentially passive is going to be checking back the river like a high percentage of the time with queen jack, because I'd say more than average, because they're just like, oh my god, okay, I got to show down my top pair. So I would argue that a guy like this, if it was the other aggro player that we were fighting against, then I think we can make this call. But versus this guy that I have is passive but decent, I think this, making a hero fold an overfold here is okay. Because I think, again, we're going to run into a set queen 10 or a flush more than 2/3 of the time, which is what it comes down to. So there you go. That's my best analysis without pulling up some range tools and whatnot. And that will do it. That will conclude my 200 No Limit live session. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Again, feel free to stop by my poker strategy blog at pokerinabox.com And I gotta say, this was a pleasure. It was a real honor doing a video for PokerVIP.com. I look forward to doing more.